Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. And as always, take a moment to stop and acknowledge the good work that you are continuing to do for yourself. And it's also important to realize that every bit of awareness that you bring for yourself, every bit of movement that you take yourself forward, and doing this all consistently and on a daily basis will bring ease into your life. And one of the things that greatly interferes with the ease in our lives is worrying, because worrying can make us miserable. It can cause us to burn out emotionally, and it can erode the progress that we have made, and it can possibly lead to a relapse back into past harming patterns. So this episode is going to be really good because I'm going to be detailing some dynamics of worrying. But more importantly, I'm going to be going over some strategies that you can use so that you can start to banish those worrying patterns within your life. But first, for those of you new here, my name is Lee, and I guide others in the transition from past harming patterns. And as it says in the title of the channel, recovery, that can mean recovery from past relationships. It can mean recovery from addiction, which is what primarily brought me here. And it can also mean recovery from a life of negative self-talk. So there is something here for everyone. So be sure that you do hit the notification bell to get weekly reminders for when we're too tired or we're too busy or we're feeling good, because all of this good work is paying off. But we do need to keep at it consistently. So get the notification bell. Be sure to check out the resources that I have linked in the description below. And as always, share. Share in the comments here. Share with those who care about you. And always make it a point to at least share with yourself the things that you are discovering about yourself. So a big reason we worry is that we perceive a threat to our well-being. And maybe your daughter wants to start walking home from school, or your employer wants to meet with you next week and hasn't said what it's about. Or perhaps you're worrying about slipping into past behaviors. And as humans, when we feel threatened, we have a stress response, and our brain takes over and puts us in a flight or fight mode. And this quiets the logical part of our mind. And because of this, we spin scenarios that may not be based on reality, and we worry. And even though it's natural, it doesn't make things helpful. And unfortunately, our approach to stress can be worrying at 3 a.m. when we need that precious sleep. And this becomes a habit, and the pattern of worrying and overthinking starts to fuel itself. So we need to break this pattern so that we can get our quality thought time for our plans and the things that will bring ease to our lives. So these first 2 steps may seem obvious, but they are important entry points into rearranging your worrying time. So this first step is to label your worrying sessions. So to change something, we obviously must be able to identify it. So when you're laying in bed at 3 a.m. and spinning the horrible scenarios and scenes, or thinking that someone is late because they were obviously in a car accident, you need to stop and say, this is a worrying session. And that seems like a little thing. And it's really just stating something that you likely already know deep down, but it's the most important step to give that worry session deliberate airtime by calling it out for what it is. And believe me, and believe it for yourself, that this step alone takes practice. Because often we are minutes or moments or hours into frantic thought before we are able to label our worrying session. Therefore, we need to start making reminders. So get out your sticky notes or whatever it takes to remind yourself that you are in a worry session. And the more you do this, and the earlier in your worry session you can cut off that frantic headspace, this will at least create the opportunity to, early in the game, replace that worry time with some self-serving thoughts. So now that you have your own attention, step 2 is to grant yourself some self-awareness. So once you acknowledge that this is a worry session, dedicate the time that you would have spent worrying into gaining some insights into what is going on. So, for example, ask yourself, what is bothering me? What am I worried about? And peel back the layers of what is really on your mind. Instead of thinking awful things that could happen, ask yourself, if a friend had the same worries, what would you advise them? And start to really dig deep and ask yourself, are you stressed in general? Are your sleeping patterns okay? Are your eating patterns not quite proper? Are you risking performance in your health for some of these scenarios and worry sessions that you're making up? So ask why you are worried. Note what physical effects that are happening, such as lack of sleep, irritability, anxiousness, can't stay focused, because even the act of spending the time with noting these effects will create a longer breach in your worry thoughts, which is the entire point, to stop the irrational, harmful thoughts and feelings. And please, go easy and smart with yourself, and don't start to worry about why you worry so much. It's natural. We are human. And because we are human, we can also change our worrying patterns. But do take time to affirm to yourself that enough is enough, and you no longer want to be in unnecessary states of worry. And just say that. I no longer want to be in unnecessary states of worry. So write it down, put it in a voice recorder, grab my download below, or whatever it takes to replace the worry time with awareness time. So now that we laid that groundwork, these next steps are going to dig deeper as we explore worry prevention patterns. So one approach is not to ignore the important worries, because this can lead to even more worries. And I want to explain this a little bit further. As you begin to practice the above, and therefore start to become aware of worry and your physical responses and your emotional states, and start to realize how unfounded some of your worries are, you will eventually start to realize the more valid worries that you have, such as, are you ignoring your health? If the communication in a significant relationship is failing. In my case, for example, and in many cases, will I be able to sustain recovery? Or whatever it is that pertains to you. These are real worries that demand attention as well as solutions. Ignoring these important life-determining worries will make things worse, as in any denial or any avoidance of major problems. So as you begin to shed the unnecessary worry part of your life, get in tune with what is of real concern, and make a pledge to address your problems not with worry but with a plan. And fortify your goal of reducing the unnecessary worry with a morning affirmation, such as, I will approach my real life concerns with a plan and not with a worry session. Another tactic to prevent worry is to take deliberate, grounded time to focus on your worry time. So not your actual worries during these times, but your actual bouts of unnecessary worry. So for example, when you have the urge to itemize the worst things that can possibly happen in an upcoming event, start to practice asking yourself, what is really the worst thing that can happen over worrying about this event? Because here you will likely get answers that are accurate and helpful. You may realize that you are causing yourself to lose sleep, that you are exaggerating your fear, that you are potentially setting yourself up for failure by being worked up in advance. And these are all helpful things to know about yourself within situations of interest. So don't ask, what is the worst thing that can happen from this impending interview, for example. Ask, what is the worst thing that can happen from worrying about the interview? Because you will likely discover that the actual perceived outcome about the interview isn't as real or as bad as the worrying about it. Another prevention to over-worrying over things is to engage in a well-grounded goal. So like any time in our life, and especially in times of challenge, or like now when you want to transition away from patterns that are no longer serving you, it's important to have a goal that will increase your feel-good levels, like a fitness goal or a better communication goal or a self-therapy goal, like learning to forgive yourself or speaking more honestly about yourself, with yourself. And particularly in recovery from past harming patterns such as addiction or bad relationships or negative self-talk patterns, it's important to keep exploring and to keep learning and to keep discovering and taking things to the next level and checking things off of that bucket list. And that's in any phase of self-development. It's always important to feel accomplished. And in recovery from the things that we moved away from, it's important not to get complacent with our purpose or our self-care, or to ignore the importance to build upon our confidence and our self-worth levels. So it is always good, positive distraction for us to keep moving towards all that you want to become, such as a person that doesn't experience the negative effects of being tied up in thoughts of unnecessary worry. So get a promise to yourself to intercept your next Recognize Worry session. Get the guide to keep handy, it's in the links below, and start digging really deep into the pillars of change. As well, check out the link for Envision Your Way Recovery course. It's an 8-week course that guides you to discover the person that you want to become. And in the meantime, try to stop worrying, work on not worrying, take good care and self-awareness, and see you in the next episode.